Hi, folks. I've got Stuart with me today. Jimmy was away at the Gardener's Arms yesterday, so it's not feeling great. Today, we get both PMQs and FMQs, which Prime Minister's questions, First Minister's questions, and they overlap. So we kind of have to jump about a bit. PMQs, Stuart, what did you think?
PMQs. Here we go. It's disappointing when it's got virtual things going on. I think at the moment the government is getting away with quite a lot with with MPs sat in their homes and all the rest of it. But what other option have they got? What did I think? What did we come out with? 144. Oh yes, extra dead. Oh yeah, okay. Keir Starmer was quite good, but he didn't press when the Prime Minister didn't answer a very simple question a couple of times. He didn't press him on it.
What was the question? Remind me.
Remind me. God, right. It's further on. God, there were 7 questions, weren't there?
6, yes, 6.
What about childcare? Not confidence in your plans?
Well,
oh yeah.
Sorry, you got it.
No, not there.
Well, what struck me was Kenny Farquharson, that great lover of Scottish devolution, hater of independence, supporter of a federated UK, I think, fence sitter extraordinaire, wrote a piece that was headlined. I'm going to believe journalists and say they don't have input into headlines, but it was headlined, care home deaths in Scotland twice the rate of England.
All right.
Now, the first question Keir Starmer brought up today was the accuracy of the figures.
Oh yes, that was published this morning, that the excess deaths, as they're called, that's taken an average of the deaths over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's a comparison between what they expect deaths to be and what they actually are. And there seems to be about 30,000 unexplained deaths in England, which strangely enough would bring them up to the figure as a percentage of the population of deaths in care homes similar to Scotland.
That's right.
But everybody, same thing at FMQs today, everybody that had the opportunity, why are Scotland's care home deaths twice England's? Now, these people must have really big sofas in their living rooms. If they can't see the elephant that's got painted on the side of it, why are England's excess deaths exactly the same percentages as everybody else in Europe's care home deaths?
No, Scotland.
Sorry, in Europe.
England.
No, in Europe, everybody's running at about the same percentage of care home deaths as Scotland.
That's what I meant. You said England.
Yeah, the outlier is England.
Yeah, the outlier is England. They're claiming they've only got half the number of deaths.
Yeah, and it's like madness. And I was actually really annoyed because Kenny Farquharson obviously simply ignored it. I refused to believe he wasn't aware of it.
Okay.
Nary a mention.
Okay, well, what the Prime Minister was asked, Keir Starmer said there's 10,000 unexplained deaths. The Prime Minister must know why there's a difference. And of course, well, I've got in here, Prime Minister's answer, waffle.
Yeah.
Care home action plan, waffle, waffle, waffle.
Well, they can't afford to admit that these are coronavirus because it takes away the only argument that can be made against the Scottish government by the Scottish Tories.
Of course, the big question, right enough, that Keir Starmer asked about, he was very good. He was being a lawyer.
Yeah,
he held up, apparently there's a graph that the UK government have been showing every single day since they've had their briefings, showing the comparison with the rest of the world and the number of deaths in the UK. It vanished yesterday, now that the UK is the worst in Europe. They didn't show it. The Prime Minister was asked about that. It's too early to compare. excess deaths.
Yeah, but they were happy to do it when they weren't at the top of the league. Now they're at the top of the league, they won't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, every unionist, journalist, commentator in Scotland is going to steadfastly ignore that. And then they're going to ask the question, why don't people trust them anymore? You know, it's stunning. But I was absolutely delighted that Keir Starmer brought it up at PMQs, to the extent that I tweeted the link to Kenny Farquharson.
Did he respond?
No, he never responds to me. He doesn't block me, but he never responds to me.
Well, I better say this at the beginning of this show before I forget. It's becoming very clear to me that the unionists and pro-union people are making an enormous mistake at the moment. They are the ones sowing division and separation every time they attack Scotland at the moment, because it's them that's creating the separation. It's them that's causing the division. And it's as if to say they open their mouth and they're not realised that they're actually making the case for Scotland to go independent. There must be 10 or 20 voters every minute changing their mind to yes.
Well, I just, because it will come out in the wash. It will come out in the wash that these English care home figures were fiddled. Or, no, that's not fair, because the ONS seems to be quite happy to allow that a good percentage of these deaths in England will be coronavirus related. It's simply the government isn't prepared to admit it.
So what did Ian Blackford go with?
Well, you're going to have to tell me, because I missed it.
So he went with mixed messaging, and he attacked the Prime Minister that they were supposed to continue with clear messaging. That was the plan with the Four Nations approach to the virus. And all that the Prime Minister did was sow confusion on Sunday, disregarded workers' safety. Buses in London are overloaded. What would the Prime Minister agree that the Scottish slogan "Stay home, save the NHS and save lives" is the correct one? Oh no. He just came out and repeated the UK one, the England one, which is complete contradiction. Which it proves my point. It's this complete stomping all over Scotland and the other devolved authorities. It's in your face. People that are not in favour of independence must be feeling very sore at the moment. But
it's the mistake that they're making is they're not being honest. They say they're being honest and transparent, but they're not. And that's going to come back to bite them.
Well, look, they're proving that devolution doesn't work. And yet we've had devolution. And I'm not talking about the last 20 years of devolution. I'm talking about NHS, education since World War II, law since 1907.
Stuart, we've had a different education system.
Yes, but this is a lot of people
forever.
A lot of people in Scotland don't know that. When you tell them, for example, that when I tell people in Scotland that people in England, generally speaking, they go to primary school for 6 years. Oh, whereas in Scotland, generally speaking, they go for 7 years. I never even realised that. They knew that it had different summer holidays, but they didn't realise they'd spent.
How did your kids go to school for 7 years? Mine didn't. Mine went to school for 6 years, primary school.
Oh, well, I went to school. It went primary 1 to 7. And then 5 years in secondary.
Well, actually, that's true. I was in primary 7 as well. Yeah,
that's true. I'm changing. It's just an example. It's not. You don't have to take it as God given. But what my case is simply this: that they're stomping all over any difference at all, whether you're Scottish, Irish, or Welsh. And it's going in the teeth of the people that believe in devolution.
But that was a point that came up at First Minister's questions when Nicola said, look, by the way, we haven't deviated from the Four Nations. England has chosen to take a different path and did what she always does and does it beautifully. And they're entitled to do that. They make decisions for England. I make decisions for Scotland.
That was Willie Rennie she did that to.
Exactly. And, you know, it was perfectly reasonable and forced Willie to say, what was his question actually?
Well, he wanted the scientific background for the Scottish decision, not to ride along on the coattails of England.
What he wanted was publication of the information she based her judgments on.
Oh, she was beautiful with that, didn't she? What did she say?
Of the 4 UK nations, only England has diverged.
Yeah.
A legitimate decision by England. Scotland has not broken away from a 4 nations approach, and we publish data on a daily basis.
But she also said that she would now invite the leaders of all the opposition parties to meet the scientific advisors that give her the advice, the data, so they can learn how the R figure is calculated.
A lot of them don't seem to understand that the R figure is not a solid figure. It's a guesstimate.
Well, it's a range. It's between.
Yeah,
nobody can be precise. But it's also the method they use to calculate it is an international method. It's not calculated differently in Scotland than it is from Russia or China.
Well, I mean, you couldn't even calculate the R number for one person.
No, it's obviously a lot of data.
Because it depends on the number of people they come into contact with. If you're in a box, not going out, not meeting anybody, your R number as an individual is 0.
Yeah. Yes, no, you were saying, I've just looked at there was a Guardian report this morning that said 22,000 care home residents in England and Wales may have died as a direct or indirect result of COVID-19 and are not included in the official figure. That was what came out this morning.
Which I remember being a bit leery right at the beginning of all this when Sturgeon said that the figures are going to be based on actual tests and presumed infection. And I thought, that's looking, I'm not sure about that. That's going to make the figures look very big. Specifically because I thought what England would do was only go on ones that had tested positive, knowing what a Tory government tends to be like when it comes to statistics. But I think it's going to prove to have been a far smarter move.
Well, when you're talking about testing, there's another piece of news that came out from the Health Services Journal. Well, it's like a health workers magazine. And data on the outcome of tens of thousands of tests carried out outside the NHS, this is by Deloitte, is disappearing into a data black hole. Nobody else has been able to get their hands on this data for the last 3 weeks.
And it's particularly important to local health boards to give them a picture of their area. It's not even a national thing. It's about local decisions.
I'm sure you said that just to get a phone call, to get interrupted in case so you can go.
No, nobody in my family can actually look at a clock before they phone. Because they know when I broadcast.
No, well, I'm glad to say the parcel I was waiting for yesterday didn't come and interrupt us. So I'm glad for that.
That's all right. So I'm sorry about that, folks.
The Reuters are saying that the UK COVID death toll is now exceeds 40,000, by far the worst yet in Europe. That's according to Reuters. I don't see how they can deny this.
Well, they're going to deny it. And I'm sorry, this is going to be the indicator of the politics of every journalist that mentions it. Because it's not as if it's a wee secret. It is literally the elephant in the statistical room at the moment. And any journalist that writes a piece accusing Scotland of having twice as many deaths in care homes as England has literally tattooed a Union Jack on his head, because there is no other reason to ignore the dubious statistics from England. No other reason at all. Richard Leonard today at FMQs.
I don't think he wanted to be. He didn't bounce up and down like Tigger.
But he did the same thing. He went with the double. First thing he said.
Aye.
care homes nearly double England.
Yeah.
What does the First Minister agree with Harry Barnes, some epidemiologist who had
No, she likes
explained
Harry
how?
Barnes.
Yeah, but
Well,
he explained how the virus spread. What was she supposed to say?
no, well, she broke her own rule. She said, "Well, look, I don't actually believe the death rates in
Yeah.
England and Wales." Now, she's
Yeah.
very real. She's never sort of comes away from that. I just don't believe them.
And that'll be the other headline. Sturgeon defends Scottish death rates in care homes by accusing England of telling porkies.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. Yes.
You know, I mean, take my word on it, folks. That'll be a headline somewhere. Probably the Sun, the Times, or the Telegraph. I'm getting really quite annoyed about it. I did think that the standard of questions in Holyrood today was very high. I did think everybody asked questions that were relevant and that the answers were an opportunity to get informed.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we should return to that. I think the First Minister looked tired. She got emotional towards the end there. To write that down, who asked the question?
That was about her mother-in-law, wasn't it?
Yes, she brought her mother-in-law up, who's 90, and then she realised I better not go there. And you could see almost a tear in her eye because she's at risk, obviously.
Well, the only slightly loopy question that I noticed was from Alison Johnson of the Greens.
Yeah, what was she on about?
She was on about clean air zones.
Oh, well, that's off the top of my. But when she first brought it up, it seemed all right. But then once the First Minister explained, well, we ain't got this. The workers are not allowed out just to set up a new project.
You know, I mean, it
doesn't qualify as frontline work, does it?
Well, I think it was the only bait she could stick on a coronavirus hook, because coronavirus attacks your lungs, apparently.
Oh, no, I never knew that.
Well, you know, I mean, and that was the only inane political, this is our manifesto.
Well, she wanted to put a green flag on it.
Well,
think about it. She's a Green. He leads the Greens. She wanted to say, "Oh, I'm still a Green politician, so we'll ask a question about low emission zones."
We've touched on Willie, who was really quite sensible, I thought. I did like his comeback when he said, if the Prime Minister was here, I would ask the same question. It was about lack of testing.
Yes, that was fair.
But I also see the Liberal Democrats were taking credit for something. What was it? Oh, Richie Souness announcing the furlough would be continued till October. Willie tweeted that he'd taken on the Liberal Democrat policy. Like the Liberal, how many is there in Parliament at the moment? Is there enough to actually fill a taxi?
I don't think there's double figures. There might be.
Well, maybe a minibus.
There might be a minibus with a load of LD. Yes.
Joanne Martin got a good question in about manufacturing PPE in Scotland.
Yeah, yeah. And would there be support for new manufacturing in Scotland? Rhoda Grant, predictably, she had the sort of, well, I'm a union rep, question about would the First Minister be following union guidelines with advice to employers about regulation. Who had a question about actually the law? Was that towards the end? That was an Ayrshire MP, MSP, wasn't it?
Was it not? What's her name? Was it not nearly the last question?
It might have been. It was something.
Pauline McNeill. Oh, no, that was
Colin Smith. It was one of those questions where it was about some workers at Prestwick Airport. The guy was saying, well, basically the company there is forcing people to go back to work or lose their job, even though there's nothing happening in the aviation business at the moment. There aren't any planes to maintain. And didn't we need the law so that the government could force this company to,
I'm not entirely sure that was a very clever question, because I would imagine airplanes are tested on air miles, but I think they're also tested at certain points in their timeline. So I don't think you can just let an airplane sit on the runway for 2 years and it doesn't need maintenance.
No, I have to agree with you. There is a possibility that there could be a very good reason for that company to keep going. As I say, I know a company in England. They make plastic wrap, and you would think, well, you don't need to be making plastic wrap during a crisis like this, but they supply the wrap that goes around the pallets that bring all the food to the supermarkets, and they've got to be wrapped in this plastic to stop them stop falling off the pallet. And they've been manufacturing huge amounts of it, so that's a key product. They can't do it without it.
There's another point at which we miss our old friend Alex Grant. That was his job in the industry, was airline safety.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he would have been able to tell us accurately. Miss you, Alec.
Yes, I definitely miss Alec.
Well,
we've got an unusual statement from the Chief Law Officer of Scotland, but is he called is it the Lord Chancellor, or is that in England?
No. He's
Lord Advocate.
Lord Advocate.
He's making a statement in about 15 minutes, and it's a little unusual. We perhaps are boosting up more than it might be quite banal, but it's a bit unusual.
It might be to do with, what's today's date? No, it can't be to do with the coronavirus legislation, can it? Because that's already been ratified again, unless they're going to change it.
Well, they're going to, that's the other business in Holyrood today. They're discussing other aspects of the special legislation that they put through to handle the emergency. I don't know what it could be. I'm quite excited. I'm hoping it's something to do with the border and they'll put up barriers.
Lord Advocate designates Scottish Border Force to close the Scotland border.
Well, judging by what we've seen today on social media and on television, huge crowds have been jamming into the underground and onto the buses in London. I think there should be a quarantine around London, so that if anybody wants to leave London, there's a high chance that they're going to be infected. So if they leave London, they've got to stay for 14 days in a quarantine.
Do you think? Would you like to see the packed buses in London?
Yes, we might as well.
I think I can do that for you.
I sat and watched one empty. 150 people came off.
Here you go.
That'll be the one I saw. It goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
Well, feel free to talk over it because there's no commentary.
It just goes on and on and on.
It's like, just people getting off a bus.
Yes, but it looks like it's like one of those student pranks where the people are getting on one door. You know?
Right, aye.
They just keep getting on one door and getting off at the other, but it just goes on and on forever. How many people were on that bus? They must have been feeling each other's bums. I don't mean,
unbelievable.
So in a way, if they're going to quarantine people coming back from abroad, they should quarantine people leaving London because they seem to be living a completely different lifestyle down there.
Well, I sat and watched that. It was from Sky News, and I sat and watched it, and I thought, I hope that's a tube station or something, or the entrance to a big works, because if that's standard across London, I expect their R number to jump to about 2.
No, I'll be honest. There are buses on Leith Walk that what do they carry? 120. The big 6-wheeler buses.
Aye.
And they do take a long time to empty. But if you're on one at 9 o'clock in the morning, and everybody is it's like what you see in those tube train jammed photographs, and they do take that long to empty. But there is no chance of social distance.
I'm wary. Really, because on Twitter yesterday there was pictures of empty tube stations and tube stations that were heaving, like main stations. We're not talking about little ones at the end of the line, and you're sitting thinking, can he really believe either one of these, even though it's photographic evidence and all the rest of it? You kind of, unless I see it on a reputable news channel, I'm no believing it.
Oh yeah, well I reposted something on Facebook, I think it was yesterday morning. And then it got blocked in the afternoon, and I got an announcement that they have some fact checkers and proved that it was taken back last year or something. So I, deleted it straight away. And within 5 minutes, I'd found a very similar photograph taken yesterday. So on Sky, so I reposted that. So that it may have been.
Aye.
It wasn't accurate, but on the other hand, it represented what really was going on anyway.
I must admit, this whole thing, I'm kind of leery about throwing accusations about, purely and simply because, the politics of criticizing new structures just because it's in England or in Scotland or whatever is really difficult. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people out there who have never had to organize anything involving more than 10 people in their lives. It's like herding cats, actually organizing the testing and things like that.
Yeah, no, on the other hand,
incredibly difficult.
Norrie, on the other hand, we now live in a world where Heathrow Airport are proud to announce to the world that they run on 99% efficiency. That means if a dead cat is found on the runway, 10,000 passengers miss a flight.
Yeah, I mean, there's no resilience.
Exactly. And there's no resilience because that's how these uber capitalists run things. They think that that's being efficient. They don't have any capacity for things going wrong. And London seems to run like that.
Well, I mean, certainly, but London has, with the terrorist threat, etc., does have fairly robust systems as far as I can see. But the idea that you can, as you say, run something so efficiently, if somebody goes sick, the whole ward has to close.
Yeah, that's that's the result of the philosophy that underpins current capitalism.
Aye, and it's at times like this it comes home to roost.
It's called productivity. Yeah, well, there's another side to productivity.
Well,
when it goes wrong.
It would be interesting to see how efficient the productivity, resilience-free productivity is when something goes wrong.
Mm.
I mean, I'd just say, I'd put it back to my own experience in the fire brigade. Machines did not go off the run. They were manned because there was always a couple of spare guys in the area. Okay, they might have had to travel from Edinburgh to Hawick to ensure the machine was on the run, but some guy would hang back and cover the shortfall. Now, machines are off the run regularly because they've cut man into the bone.
Oh, well.
So your coverage is not what it should be.
Well, I'm going to go off and have a look at, see what the Lord Advocate's got to say. I bet it's a big letdown, but I live in hope.
Probably will be. I hope Jimmy's suffering, by the way.
Oh, you're cruel. That's him phoning up to complain.
Okay. We'll call it a day at that, because that daughter of mine's phoning again. And we'll catch you tomorrow, where hopefully we'll have Jimmy with us. Thanks for listening, folks.
Okay.
Cheers for now.